Hello and welcome to my workshop. So we're finishing up with the RC Everyday Rat Rod. I've got pretty much everything I need to get done on this portion of the build completed, and I'm about ready to box this up and ship it off. I'm going to go over the details of what has been done. All right, so let's get into it. So the first, I'll just start off in the rear. The axle is going to be staying with me, but the suspension and the links will be going with the truck. So this is a Transverse leaf spring, and I've never really done one before, but I think it turned out pretty well. There's not a whole lot of travel, but I really don't think these trucks really need that much. It's not like it's a rock crawler. So next, the fuel tank, and so this also doubles as battery storage. There's a hole drilled into the bottom that where the power wire can come off, and this cap pops off from this side, allowing you to store a pretty decent sized battery in the back. I was able to get the window bezel finished in the rear, some glass cut that'll go inside. Going around to the side, we have the stack, and so this was a piece of ABS plastic, and I drilled out and cleaned up the end so it's a little bit thinner. I then took a 1/2 inch copper fitting, cut one end down and inserted this in, attached it to what is a curtain rod, and used a little plastic epoxy to make the transition. And then finally there's a 3/8 inch fitting that's been cut down on both ends, which turns it up. Now this is going to be hooked up directly to a turbo, and I'm also supplied the other side, which will hook right into the turbo, and then all he'll have to do is find a piece of braided hose that he can glue in here to make it look like, that'll make it look like a a decent sized diesel exhaust. Added rivets and scale detail to the door, little door handle. All the rivets are drill with push pins. So you cut the very tip of the push pin off and you glue all these in. So moving around to the front, I did the best I could to add a fair amount of detail for the firewall. I've used pictures to simulate as best I can some of the things that I'm not really sure what all some of this is, but some kind of water container. I think this is latches. I believe these are intakes for where they would have the pods on the side for the filters. So I just blocked these off because you have a turbo and you won't be using these filters here. I made a little windshield wiper motor, which will just pop in here once he gets that detailed. Left it out, make it easier to paint and detail because it's recessed in. The grill in the front just has a piece of mesh that's cut from a file folder. What I did is I made the bezel out of styrene. I ran a rod through and then took plastic epoxy and shaped and sanded these forms down. And what that does is it allows to have the rod to give the rigidity and a place where I can kind of mash the end down and drill a hole through to mount these light buckets. And it also supports the the plastic epoxy. So this is made to look like a bracket on an older style Peterbilt. He'll be providing the front suspension, but I made the mount to his specifications, so there'll be 2 shocks that are going up to these tapped holes that'll come down to a bar that I believe is from a 1/14 tractor trailer, but I'm not 100% sure. And then there's some bars that go back where he'll drill holes in the side. So what that allows to do is it pivots on this back here, and then the shock is what positions it. So it's not a whole lot of travel in the front either, but it's plenty enough for an on-road truck. So just to kind of balance it out on the other side, I added a little step. Now this step has real aluminum diamond plate that was left over from a project that I did for one of my friends. So I just made a little simple styrene step, added the diamond plate. That bolts on to these aluminum brackets on the bottom, and the body is just mounted basically to this exhaust stack over here. That's the only bolt that holds it in. Okay, so I'll just quickly take this one screw out, and it's literally just screwed right into this plastic. Like I said, it's thicker down here than it is at the top, so there's plenty of meat for that screw to go in. And so once you get that screw out, you literally just lift straight up on the body, and as you can see, it's just fit snugly down on these aluminum pieces, and then the two side pieces gives it a positive stop to hold the body down in the right position. So as you can see, the chassis is all custom made. It is a piece of square tubing that I was able to make bends, and I did that by carving into the square tubing, but not all the way through, in about 5 or 6 very close places with a saw. And once you do that, it allows you to bend the tubing back on itself and touches into those gaps. And you keep doing that until you get to the right bend you want. Once you do that, you can come back and silver solder all those together, and it makes a nice smooth radius. So you will have it, tapered in the front, and kind of drops down here, and the where the chassis, the skid plate and everything sits a little bit lower, and then raises back up in the back to hold the rear suspension and the fuel tank. In the center, I have a planetary gearbox. It's a 5-to-1, and there's plenty of room to put a motor, 540 cam motor in the front, and then just a drive shaft to connect it in the back. That 5-to-1 should be plenty enough to get this thing moving pretty quickly. I believe most like the axials are around 7-to-1. I had to look that up to make sure, but anyway, it's going to work fine. The nice thing about it is that it's very low profile, which allows me to get a full interior. To talk about the interior, I have a dash, and it's a very simple dash, but it's I'm not sure how well you can see it, but there's just a ton of buttons and dials, and then I have little washers that I have glued on to represent where the gauges would be on the dash. And this is screwed in from the bottom, so you'll be able to take the screws out and pop this whole dash out, detail it, and put it back in after the whole body's painted and detailed separately. The front window has the bezel similar to the rear, with just little plastic pieces that I've cut that you could fit in from behind, and give you windows in the front and windows in the back. There'll be no windows on the side. You can see the top is completely open, and I have made this little rag top, and that'll be glued in the back and just glued down on the sides, and so simulate that the rag top's open, which allow you to look inside to see the interior and all the detail. So I think that's pretty much the whole truck. Pretty excited how this has turned out. I really can't wait to see what RC Everyday will do once he gets this and puts it together. So let me put this back together, take off the rear axle, and put it in a box and get it shipped out. But until then, we'll see you in the rocks.